Chapter 2, Game Architecture, Precession, Cycles, Cataclysm. I've come to believe that the stars encode truths about time. The night sky is our celestial map to understanding the base reality simulation. The slow precession of our planet Earth takes about 25,920 years to complete. This is known as a great year. The year is broken down into 12 ages we know as zodiac signs. We are currently in Pisces, transitioning to Aquarius. Randall Carlson, Graham Hancock, and Walter Cruttenden, to name only a few, have done fantastic work scientifically showing how precessional knowledge was woven into ancient sites like Stonehenge and the Giza pyramids. Hancock in particular has demonstrated with innumerable archaeological facts that there must have been a very ancient advanced civilization that was wiped out at the end of the last ice age by a combination of climate change, meteors, and deluge. A few survivors of that cataclysm seeded the great ancient civilizations we know. This is a fascinating and fulfilling field of study. For my purposes, it shows that the nature of our base reality simulation is cyclical. I also believe it's spiracle, meaning the cycles gradually move in a forward direction, not in a two-dimensional loop. Cruttenden has put forward research to suggest that our sun actually orbits around another star, possibly Sirius. He contends that this is the cause of Earth's precession as our entire solar system moves through the galaxy in a 25,920-year orbit. Most interestingly, his thesis suggests that our consciousness is affected by our position to that star. This gives meaning and explanation to classifications like Golden Age and Dark Age. Our consciousness becomes more aware of itself in higher ages because of celestial positioning and our exposure to specific electromagnetic frequencies. If this is true, it would make the cyclical game-like nature of base reality inescapable. In darker ages, we would be more prone to animalistic materialism, perhaps as in after the fall of Rome. Higher ages would see a blossoming of art and science like in the Renaissance. Carlson and Hancock have done significant work showing how cataclysm may be tied to the precessional cycle. That would be further confirmation of the cycle. Like a game, the challenge of cataclysm continues to arise. Catastrophe is not actually a given, neither is survival. Celestial positioning gives us what can be thought of as the superpowers of higher consciousness to win the game. Even if you're not sold on this compelling theory, you can at least be sure that we have yet to win this game. Instead of me trying to convince skeptics of precession, I recommend reading the research as I mentioned to learn more. For the scaffolding of this book, I am taking their core ideas and building on them as if they were established fact, and they one day might well be. All right, so how do I unpack that? So that's the end of chapter 2. I guess it was several months ago. I was listening to Higher Side, and I heard I probably had heard Randall Carlson talk about his Freemasonry background and his sacred geometry work. So I didn't actually know that he was into this kind of I guess you could call it ancient seed civilizations. Then I think Greg Carlwood had Walter Cruttenden on there, and he put forward the precessional theory, in a scientific way. He's a scientist and archaeologist, or maybe he's just a scientist. But I think there's also a field called astroarchaeology that deals with this type of stuff, which I wasn't familiar with. So he put forward that theory, which I've described in this chapter, where the Earth is, precession is known, that the great year, that's scientifically known, but he took it further, saying that, it's not the Earth that's wobbling, it's the entire solar system because of this alignment with the stars, probably Sirius, and possibly how that interacts with the sun because it's the sun that's actually orbiting Sirius, or I think he called it a dual orbit. They're orbiting each other. So, something happens, in the electromagnetic field that has a pretty big effect on our consciousness, when it's in certain positions. So, I was really compelled with that idea because it kind of, I guess to me, it's sort of, I could make the leap to say, oh, that's probably why astrology, there's some way to decode, astrology can be pretty accurate from my understanding, and that's kind of a mystery. It's like, after you see so many coincidences and what I'd term synchronicities, or if you just see a field like astrology and you're just like, why are they getting so much stuff right? That provides a scientific pathway to kind of unpack what's going on. I guess we are, an astrologer is translating feelings and abstractions, maybe that are coming through the electromagnetic field, and they're able to decode that, with their consciousness, into language that, can be, fairly accurate for a lot of people. I've never done any readings. This is just on what I've read and what I've heard. I'm not really, I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing any astrological readings. It's not my interest right now. But anyway, I am interested in paranormal, but I am actually more interested in science pushing forward and understanding consciousness better, which to my knowledge, is not well understood. And so this is a pathway to that. I read both of Graham Hancock's books on finding the ancient civilization. What's the first one called? Fingerprints of the Gods is the one he wrote in the 90s. It's a great book. And then a few years ago, he came out with Magicians of the Gods. So I think I got a pretty good factual understanding of why we should think that there were higher civilizations, or there was at least there was a higher civilization, which could account for the similarities of ancient cultures, like that seem to have nothing to do with each other. Like, you've got pyramids in Egypt, you've got pyramids in South America. You've got even, some of the symbols are and some of the myths are very similar. Just a lot of coincidences once again. And like I can remember one. So, I haven't looked into this much, but something that Graham Hancock goes into in Fingerprints is I think it's, I don't remember which tribe it is. I don't know if it's the Aztecs or some. I'm not really sure. I don't have my terms right, but they have a god called Viracocha, and he was white, and he came across the ocean. I think he had a beard, he had red hair, and he gave them their culture. He gave them their technology. What they would term as technology, and then he left. So it's sort of there's a lot of that's not the only story like that where some outsider comes and civilizes the a sort of a more hunter-gatherer type of tribe, and then they become advanced, but because they're imparting knowledge. And I think that idea is coming from, it winds back to there's documented evidence of a great deluge flood. I guess I didn't write down the exact date in the book, but it's about, it's like 12 or 13,000 years ago, that wiped out any advanced civilization was wiped out, and the survivors would have been seeding, the surviving hunter-gatherers who would have had an easier time. Then you start to, things like why does every culture have a flood myth? It's virtually, you can go to you could just probably find hundreds of flood myths. So, something was going on. Randall Carlson, I think he's done a lot of work in sort of proving that it was a meteor that kind of triggered this whole thing. And he kind of studies basically like there was an ice age where, everybody would agree there's an ice age, and then this meteor would have struck the earth, and changed the climate situation drastically, and created rapid melt and massive flooding, and that would have been going on for a while. And he has a background as a geologist as well as all his architecture background and whatnot. So that's where he's looking at. So anyway, that's sort of a long explanation. I think you probably need to just check out their work to really, you probably have to immerse yourself in your work. So I can't do it justice. The way I'm recording this is, I'm recording this in my vehicle, and I don't have my computer to do quick searches to get the terms right. I'm just trying to lay out the overall concept. But to take it back to the book, if you think about precession and cyclical ages, I mean, what is more game-like than that? I mean, that means we're going. That means. We're gonna have, when they say history is repeating, maybe it could mean something like that. That our conscious, I think most people know, like, let's say it's a cloudy day, like your consciousness, your overall something it's affected by these natural phenomenon. And, we don't really know, how much our mental well-being is affected by these things we can't see, but it's probably a great deal. Like we have all, people sort of label you nutty if you say, oh, there's too much Wi-Fi and there's too much 4G or now 5G, it's going to affect us. Haven't done that much research into why that could be the case, but you wouldn't put yourself in a microwave, and from my understanding, a lot of these technologies are sort of in that spectrum of technology where there's some potency there. That's just to say that we are being affected by things we can't see, and sometimes things we can see. I mean, if you go to the ocean, you're going to feel a certain way. If you go out into the woods, you're going to feel a certain way. There's just energies that are, that we react to. And so on a great macro scale, like something could be, our consciousness could be like supercharged, when we move into, let's say, the age of Aquarius. Maybe that's what could be going on, like in terms of the great year. I'm not sure if that's the last year, but maybe there's something to that. And hopefully repeating the cycle when I wrote that, I believe that time is spiracle, not just circular, because hopefully when you go back into a lower age, you're still making progress, but there might be certain ages that the progress is much more accelerated. If you think about our current time, like we are, things do seem very chaotic if you are immersed in news media. It's kind of a big question to me if things are as bad as they seem. I'm sure they are certainly bad for some people, but in terms of history, like are we living in a particularly dark time, or is it the news framing of events making it seem like things are bad, because of course they're only going to report bad news that hold people's attention, and fear is really the most powerful emotion to get people's interest. So that's sort of a tangent, but that's just me rambling about precession and how I think it affects us, and I think there's something to it, and that's what I wanted to touch on in this chapter. And obviously I don't go deep. I'm not the expert. The names I've given you are the experts. I think you'd be convinced, if you read their work. It's just, I would say don't toss this off if you don't know anything about it. If you do know something about it and you're immersed in it, and you think it's, maybe you're a scientist and you think there's nothing to it, we should have a discussion. Comment, do something in the comments. Write me. Let's have a spirited debate. Or I want to learn something. I think that's a good place to leave it. Next week will be chapter 3. It's called Consciousness Cannot Be Created or Destroyed. A little teaser. I briefly take on transhumanism. And like I said in the preface, this is a work of synthesis. I am not an expert. I am trying to. I think I have an insight that I'm building up to, and I'm using a lot of this other research I've learned to get there, so we can really understand what the truth, what I'm saying the truth cipher is. But before we do that, we have to understand reality. And that's really what I'm building up to. Like, I'm trying to explain what reality is, and it's not Elon Musk's computer simulation.